What's something we could teach our kids?
Hard work doesn't hurt you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, just awesome.
So we were just chatting about how your parents came to be in the Hemio.
My grandparents came in from Scotland, so he heard of these people going to Hemiota to Homestead. Get a quarter section for $10 or something like that, so he was keen to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked on his homestead. You had to break so many acres and you had to build a certain kind of a barn and a little bit of a house, and so he would do that in the summer, and then in the winter time he worked in putting the railway through.
Oh, wow.
I don't know exactly where, but then when it came time again in the summer, then he would go back to plowing with his oxen. I don't know what he would do with the oxen overnight. He'd probably give it to a neighbor to look after or something. Well, they had to break 10 acres to get their homestead patent, and then I think they had so long to get another 10 acres, so, but they had to have a house of some sort and lodgings. And,
Right, like
yeah,
an
it probably
actual...
was a sod house, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a shame in my mother's family there was no picture of those two, the beginning houses, but I have a beautiful picture of the house that was built. It accommodated 6 of the family, so it was a good-sized house, but a lovely house. Yeah, I still have it on the picture on the park history book, so.
What's something we could teach our kids?
Hard work doesn't hurt you.
Yeah.
Yes. And I said if there's one thing I want to leave my grandkids with, one saying was, this is a saying that my mother told me, and it was my grandmother's saying. The wifey, that means a Scotch woman. Mm-hmm. My wifey always took what she had and never wanted. And so I'd say to my mother, well, why don't we get that? And she would say, why can't you be happy with what we have? It wasn't a very satisfying answer for me.
No, definitely not.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and I always went to a consolidated school, what meant that they hauled in kids from a big area,
mm-hmm.
whereas Bert went to a small country school where they had to get their own transportation there, and there's maybe 30 or 35 children, whereas we had grades 1 to 12.
Oh, okay.
And we had a great big brick school, but where Bert went to school was just a little old church that had been remodeled. So when I look back at it and I think, well, what Bert had in that little country school was a much better, I won't say education, but community life. You know, there was a lot of things that, and I just amazed at some of those school teachers that came out maybe on the first year, and they were expected to put on a Christmas concert, a 2-hour concert.
Wow.
With all the children. And you know, in those days, for costumes we had crepe paper, and those teachers would be able to make beautiful little outfits for them to say Irish dancers or something, mm-hmm. all dressed in green. And I just marveled at those, and some of those teachers were maybe only 18 years old to come to us as a little country school, but they always put on a beautiful, and yet we never had that in in our 12.
Oh, really?
We had, once a year we went down to McConnell's Hall. It was a big hall, and then the best pupils from each grade would put on maybe a 2-hour program, mm-hmm. and you had to pay to get in, and this money went to the Children's Aid.
Okay.
But as far as seeing Santa Claus, he was never there. Rivers, of course, is a little bit bigger than our little country school, but they still have a Christmas concert for the children, and I'm very pleased to see that that's carried on. So, the technology is just unbelievable. When I see what a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, like little guy there to supper time, was that out here?
Bollman or?
Oh, and he was putting on all those colors on that magnetic board. You know, I don't think I ever knew my colors or my numbers before I went to school. And when I started to school, I remember being in the post office with my dad one day, and he said, "I want you to know this is your school teacher," and her name was Miss Turner. And so that was fine. I'd never been in the school, a great big brick building, and my brother Lauren is 6 years older than me. So he took me by the hand and took me and dropped me at the door. That was my initiation in grade 1.
Wow.
So I was intrigued. I went to the corner, and they had a fountain, water fountain, a crock, and you push the button and this. So I went to investigate this thing, and the boy came up to me and said, "Hello, Dale." I was insulted. Why would he call me by my last name? Why didn't he call me? I have no idea how he even knew who I was.
Incredible.
He was probably a grade 2 student. So that was my first day at school. Well, anyway, I've had a lot of good memories. As I said, my parents were never well off, and we never had that much but we never wanted for anything. And Hazel's family were always so. Uncle Norman came home gassed from the war, and in those days the veterans didn't have any support whatsoever. So a lot of the time that as many of their kids could come down and stay with us because they'd get a decent meal.
Yeah.
I remember being up there playing ball one time, and Bob, the oldest one, I think that was the only time I stayed overnight there. And he came out and he said, "Okay, you guys, supper, 1 egg each, and that's it.
Wow.
Don't ask for more." And I just thought, now, Aunt Jenny, mustn't that have been pathetic to have to be able to say that we don't have anything more in the house.
Say that.
And if it hadn't been for my dad, I'm sure because every time we went, they called it a grist of wheat, you took a load of wheat and right in town there, and he would mill it into flour. And my dad always took bags of flour up to them. And if we killed the pork or whatever, there's a lot of that meat went,
Yeah.
kind of hard to us, I guess. Yeah. And so in the summertime, as I say, we just seemed to have boys coming out our ears. And as I say, I've lived in the corner. There was Jim Park, there was Tom Sedgwick, there was Jack Truan, and then there was Hudden and Lauren and Alan and Don. And as I said, I had to get out and play with boys because there's no other girls around to play with me. So that was, I say, if I had to go and spend a day with Hazel or went to Oakner for a couple of days, it was nice to be with the girls, but I learned to play ball and I learned to rough it with the rest of them. So, and I said Mom needed a lot of the help in the house because there was always that crew to feed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had the old bunkhouse, but I think it was originally a car garage, and we made it into a bunkhouse, as they called it. And it had 2 big double beds in there, and so once it became summer, that place was always full of 4 boys and maybe more, I don't know. So that was extra work for Mom, for all the food. And the one winter we had a terrible snowstorm, and that caravans were right full to the top with snow. And my dad made a slide down there. He carried water over there and made ice on that slide. How he would ever, I don't know, they made me stair steps to get up there to carry those pails of water up there or not. But anyway, we would get our toboggan on that, and we would go right out and go right across the road and into the slough. So my dad and Lauren dug that hole out under the Now, how would you get in there to start with to get digging dirt out? But they made a cistern, and every pail of that dirt was hauled up and taken out a little window in the basement.
Wow.
Until we had, and of course, we didn't have money to put cement on there. So what my dad did was treated that black earth with water glass. Now, water glass is a cement preservative, and he brushed that on 2 or 3 coats of that, and you know, that was a reservoir cistern there for years.
That skill to make something out of nothing is.
That's what I said. My dad had lots of good ideas how you could do something with nothing. There's another thing too. We were talking about the water glass. We used to always collect our eggs at the end of October, 1st of November, because the hens start to molt and they will quit laying. And of course, that was about the time you wanted to do all your Christmas baking. The pies and the Christmas cake had to be made months ahead. So we'd save up these eggs and we'd mix up this water glass with water and then put it in a big crock and fill it up with eggs. And then those eggs would stay, I forget how many years they said they would stay in there, because it's just like cementing the eggshell.
Oh, okay.
And they're not porous anymore.
Yeah.
We would have lots of eggs then to do the Christmas baking for the different people would say, well, our hens aren't getting any eggs, so we can't do our baking, we'll have to go and buy eggs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then always was my job then to go down in the basement and put your hen in this gooey, cold mess in the wintertime and pull out these, well, we want 5 eggs, so I go down and get 5 eggs. And another thing, in the fall, you'd have your young chickens in a certain building, and then the old Jews, as they called them, would come around and they would buy old hens. Oh, I won't take any laying hens. I won't take any laying hens. It's only the other ones that aren't laying I'll take. Well, then the next morning we go out, there's no eggs. Yeah, so we get our old hens, get rid of them then. Or lots of times we would take the old hens and boil them up and make chicken, and in the canned chicken, a sealer. And the old hens, they really made lovely juice in the sealers.
Like chicken stock.
Yeah. So I would just love to buy.
They'd kill the whole chicken.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would take the legs and the wings and the breast pretty well, yeah. Yeah, so I just loved that with the potato salad in the summer. There was nothing any better. I'd love to get a quart of chicken now. I don't think, and the Hutterites maybe do it, but I don't think there's anybody else ever does it, so, yeah.
Was there a doctor in?
Yes, there was a doctor in Hamiota. And Dr. Hudson, my brother was named after him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, he was a good old country doctor, but they did the best they could. Yeah, they always had a small hospital there, so I was born in the hospital, Lauren was born in the hospital, so that was quite an advantage, where Bert's municipality didn't have a hospital. They had to go all the way to Minnedosa, so no hospital in Rapid City. And so when Bert and I started writing letters, my dad kept saying that, oh, this guy must be getting pretty serious. All these letters keep coming. and then for the first Christmas, I mean, it just blows my mind away now. But it came this big box in the mail, and my dad brought this box in, and of course, Christmas gifts was not a big thing with our family.
Yeah.
And so when I opened it up, here was this little cedar chest full of cosmetics for me. Well, it just blew my mind away, because he seemed as if he must be a millionaire and I'm at the bottom of the heap.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how it started. And I hardly even met him that long, not many times that I had to spend that expensive a gift on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was so thoughtful of him that he sent my mother, she was a widow by that time, the subscription to the Reader's Digest.
Oh, wow.
You know, and we weren't a reading family either. And to send something to my mother, that was really special too.
That's serious.
But then he didn't have his own mother, so I think maybe knowing that I had a mother yet, it was special to him too. So, and Bert always said that he liked coming to my place for meals because we made meat and potatoes and stuff the same way as his mother did. So he thought I'd be a pretty good cook.
And didn't Grandpa keep that pen that he wrote all the letters with? I think he kept that pen for a long time.
Yes, it was in. I have a nice little cigar box full.
Oh, good.
They're all fountain pens, so I think there's probably Bert's dad's pen still in there. So
That's incredible.
yeah, so yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And Bert, when he came up to the dance, it was $25 to get into the dance, and then quite often he maybe had 50 cents that would buy each of us a Coke or something afterwards, and that's why I felt so sorry for him standing in front of that cafe there, because I knew he didn't have money to buy anything else, and he was going to have to wait till Leonard.
When you and Bert built your own house, it was a fair challenge.
It was a real challenge, yeah. Well, the neighbors did come and help, yes. They saw how desperate we were to get in there. Like Bert and Frank in 1945, they tore down the old Bollman homestead house. But they had been renters in it, and it was terrible. It was run down, and there was rat holes through everything, and they just said it couldn't be used again, so they tore it down and saved every board, and they straightened every nail. They had 2 kegs like this, you know what a keg is, yeah. They had those straightened nails, and we sold them at our sale for $1 a keg. Frank paid $500 more for his farm, and Bert's dad thought with all this lumber and stuff and old doors and windows we would be able to build a house for $500. Well, $500 didn't even put in the basement. So then we started using this old lumber, and we found out that the old lumber and the new lumber the old lumber was not planed, the new lumber was planed, so it was just out.
So they're off by half an inch.
So we had to buy all new lumber, but we did use some of the, they called it sheeting, to put the outside on, and then nailed the stucco wire onto that, and we stuccoed it, yeah. We finished harvest in 1949 at the last day of August, which that is a real record, so it gave us a good chance to get going at the house, and we had contractors from Rivers come out and they put up I'll call it the skeleton, the framework.
Yeah.
And then the neighbors came in, and some came in and we shingled it, and some came in. Well, the Cormans, they came over, and he was a pretty good carpenter, so he put the doors and windows in. Somebody else came to help something else, and so by November we were able to move in. We had lived in the little garage out there that you saw on the farm for 2 winters, and so it was horrible old cupboards we put in there and old linoleum, and Frank said he just felt ashamed to think that we'd have to have that, put up with that old linoleum. And we only had the kitchen drywalled and the bedroom. And of course we had no hydro. And so when Bert would go down in the basement to see to the furnace, that was a big step, the furnace. But you could see through all the rough shiplap.
Oh, really?
So that you put the boards this way, and then they went this way then. The next winter we did that. But I said that was leery. You walk on that floor and you could see the light through the boards. So, yeah, and so then that first winter, I spent the winter putting the insulation in, the bats in there, getting ready for drywall. And talk about beating Regina thinking about building a new house. I don't blame them one bit, because I did all the crack filling, and I made a horrible job. And I did the whole house, and I never improved. I said my feet were so cold for those 2 winters because we had the old cook stove and they had a reservoir for hot water at the end. So I sat a long little time on that so I didn't have to sit with my feet on the floor. But you know, that little house was really wonderful because it was just a garage, but it was just like a dollhouse. People come down and said, you know, what a wonderful place this is. Even Adrian Burnell, Glenda wouldn't remember her, very fussy little lady. But they came and they said, well, I just can't believe what you're living in here. It's, yeah, you may do, yeah. And then they added on a little piece that came off of the building that they were taking down, and it made a little sitting room for us. So we had a pull-out pouch, and I had my new sewing machine, and I had my cedar chest in there. I was quite proud of my little front room. So yeah, it's amazing what you can do, especially if you're in love. I guess.
Absolutely.
Then when Glenda came along, what a miserable little baby she was. So we were trying to drive all the upstairs by then, and of course I'd go up and hold the end of the gyprock panel with a broom or something. I don't know what we had, and Bert was knacking that end, and then all of a sudden there was a baby bawling downstairs. So I'd say if he'd get that tacked, then down I'd go and shake the cradle and see if she could go to sleep. But I'd finally get her asleep and go up and hold another. But finally I took her to the doctor and we found out her formula was far too strong.
Oh, okay.
But oh my God, we wore the floor out. And then with the winters too, I mean, the men were so busy with their horses, you know, and the cattle. And they had to haul in, they didn't have bales in that day, so everything had to be hauled in from the stack in the field, and the manure had to be hauled out in the morning, and so they were busy too. So, like as Bert said, he never had the kids to bed, because as soon as he was done with supper, he would go and milk at the barn, and when he would come in, they'd be in bed. So he said he missed a lot that he didn't.
And I remember you telling me one time that when electricity came to that area, you were able to buy a fridge and a stove, and they put it on your electricity bill.
Yes.
That's something you paid off every month.
Well, the first stove we bought, we had a bunch of weaning pigs, and they weren't good pigs. They just didn't seem to want to grow. So this guy had the hardware in Rivers, and he also had a small barn and some few pigs. So he said, "Oh, I'll take your pigs and I'll sell you the stove." So we got the stove, but the fridge did come in. It went onto the electrical bills.
How much of a change was it for you in your life to have an electric stove?
Oh, altogether different. Like we didn't have to haul in wood to feed the stove, and you didn't have to take out ashes, and it was just totally different lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, when you went to do the bread, you had to have a nice warm place for it to rise, and quite often the houses weren't really that warm, that you had to have a nice place to make sure that the bread was rising. And then once you get that far and head into Lowe's and then into the stove, you had to have the right wood to make the right fire and keep the right temperature, and and you usually cook 4 to 6 loaves at a time. So I can often think about the men when they were there sawing wood or something, and I would have to bring the oven up to temperature so I'd be able to make my biscuits, and I would run out and get a bunch of chips from the bottom of the wood pile, put it in the stove, and it would just bring the heat up right away quick. Or get some dry wood where the others more seasoned green wood didn't catch fire make heat quite so quick. So there was always tricks of the trade. Well, I certainly did my share of sewing, I guess. That I think, look, I see all these kids now in my clothes, and I think, oh God, I made that and I made that. So my mom and dad gave me a sewing machine for my wedding gift. So I certainly made use of it. I think a lot of people bought them, but because I was able to sew, I made a lot of them. So when the kids got a little older, they say, well, I would like the sleeves off of that one in the catalog, and I'd like that kind of a skirt.
Okay.
So when Raymond was born, we had a vicious storm, and there was no roads going anywhere. So there's a Moline garage man that he was always game to do different things, so he made a snowplane. And he used to be able to take the doctor around, Dr. Gooley, a lot of times. They phoned up Charlie Bartram at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he was able to go out and warm up this thing, and took June to the hospital. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was like a homemade snowmobile.
Yeah.
And before they were municipal, do you remember how much you would pay or what the
I don't
process
remember. I remember saying that when Lynn was born, I had to have $20 saved up, and I had it saved up because I know we had to pay $20 for the baby to be born. And I said, well, I'm not having a baby and saying we can't pay for it. And I can remember saying that and saving those nickels and dimes and quarters or whatever till we had, yeah. But how would I go and buy my groceries if I only had $10?
Mm-hmm.
I would have to know what I could buy, or else I'd have to take something back and put it on the counter, and that would be very embarrassing.
Yeah.
So that's been a long way, and then they got so that we could charge it at the Moline Co-op, and then just paid at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big saving. But I remember going to town on Saturday night, and Doreen Bate was saying, well, it was a rainy, wet night, and she said, well, I just went and bought flannelette, and I'm going to make pajamas all weekend. And I thought, now, aren't you pretty lucky, because I wouldn't have the money to go and buy. She had 5 daughters.
Wow.
Maybe she didn't make that many pair of pajamas, but yeah. So I think we valued our money more than you guys do, because you got, it's in the bank and you just take Charge X, Visa, whatever.
Yeah.
No, I'm getting that way now too, that when I go I don't really worry. I get my groceries and
it's quite a privilege.
it is, it
not have to
really
worry.
is, when you think it's
Yeah.
what we have been gone through, yeah.
Yeah.
I was married in 1947, and then in 1948 they asked me to join the WI, which is called the Women's Institute, is the proper name for it. And so I have belonged to that now for 68 years. So it's been a very good program as far as I'm concerned. And it was started by a lady named Adelaide Hoodless in where the heck's the town now? In Ontario, anyway. And she'd lost an infant son by an impure milk. And so she said, it's my duty now to inform the rest of the women that as many as I can contact, to tell them to boil their milk, that they will not have to go through the same sadness I've gone through. So it started in Ontario, and then it has gone all across Canada. And then there's a lady from Ontario, Mrs. Watts, and she took it from England. And from England, it has mushroomed all over the world. So in our big conferences, we have people from India, Africa, all those native countries. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how we've been able to reach into their communities and provide a little bit of financial help to let them do their crafts. Mm-hmm. and make them more viable in their own communities to help out. Our motto for Women's Institute is for home and country. And I think in the first years when I began, it was all to do with the home. How to purify milk and do all this sort of thing. And it gave mothers a good idea of things that were good for their family to eat.
Yeah.
Whereas now that is so common, but those days, so we would sort of have a meeting, and then we would have maybe a program and half an hour of singing, sing-song, and then we'd have lunch, and so it was a beautiful afternoon to get out. And well, it was very good for the community because I was a new bride, And the very first meeting I was at, I had to stay present. And I was just scared silly until my name was called, and then I could relax. So it was good for me because the meetings were all held in the homes.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one I knew was Bert's cousin, Marge Bridgman. June hadn't joined at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very nice. We would go to all the homes, so I sort of knew where the people in the community lived. Bert was always very cooperative, and when it was our meeting that he would stay at home and look after the children.
Oh, good.
That I would get that one afternoon out, because where we lived it was very isolated.
Yeah.
And we were at the end of the road, nobody went by, and so that was a real outing for me to get out to see these women. So in the beginning it was all for home,
Mm-hmm.
and now the last 10, 15 years now it's been for country.
Okay.
And we've been making resolutions that we would send to our provincial government,
Mm-hmm.
and the Rivers WI and the Moline WI have had several of our resolutions have been accepted. We asked reflector tape to be put on the railway cars,
Okay.
especially the flatbeds, because in local, like at Moline now, there was no arms or signals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you saw this train going by, and that was fine, but then you wouldn't see these flatbeds, so you'd
sure.
go across. So we had several accidents just from that, and that was accepted by the government, and it took a few years, but came to be.
That's cool.
And now the recent one, just this year, I think it was, that we asked on these big long trailers that they would have, saying that they were extended long loads. So if you wanted to pass, you had to have
I have a long way to go.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that is two of the ones.
Did you think you'd ever have 8 great-grandchildren
No, I certainly did not.
within 5 years?
I still can think of Ron Bollman at the reunion.
Yeah.
So I said I had great-grandchildren. He looks at me. How can you have 8 great-grandchildren? Well, I said it was quite easy. I said I had 2 girls, and they gave me 4 grandchildren, and 4 grandchildren each gave me 2. And he turns to his daughter and said, "Okay, you girls heard that? Let's have something." So he is a grandfather now. It's been 90 years of living and learning.
Mm-hmm.
And wonderful to see all the family growing up. And how you guys, and I say, it's been such a privilege to be able to see you guys grow up, get married, and have families. How many families are the privilege to see that?
Yeah.
That either the one spouse or the other is gone, and there's been a second marriage and it's never worked out, and
Yeah.
I've just so many things to be thankful for.